Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Know You Know, your one-stop knowledge sharing platform for all things careers, life after high school, as well as opportunities that are available to you. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you like this video, pop a like button. Press the like button and just feel free to comment if you have any questions as well. So today I have a very special guest. As you've seen, I have posted a little bit about Youth Capital in the past. I think mentioned it a bit, and I've also posted about it on my social media platforms. However, today we do have a very special guest, Kristal, who'll be telling us more about the work that Youth Capital does, what Youth Capital is, and how you can get involved as a young person and what opportunities are available there. So stay tuned and watch this video. Kristal, welcome to this video.
Good afternoon, Tsapang. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you first start by explaining your role in Youth Capital before we get into all the stuff about Youth Capital, all the juicy stuff?
Sure. So I get to lead the awesome team that is Youth Capital. And my background is quite academic, quite research driven, and actually I worked in public health before, but I felt very strongly that youth development and youth employment is something that we need to solve as a country and is really the root of everything. And so I was very excited to get involved with this project and bring my skills from the research space and the policy and advocacy space into addressing this youth crisis in our country.
Wow, that's actually quite true. I think youth unemployment is quite a huge problem. And I think for the most part, what makes it even more huge is that there seems to be no plan whatsoever, which is why I'm particularly excited about the work that Youth Capital does. But let's get then into the work. So what is Youth Capital?
So Youth Capital speaks about itself as a long-term campaign to shift gears on youth unemployment. And what does that really mean? So what we really do is we work as a choreographer in this youth employment and youth development space. And why do we use the term choreography? It's because we really try to bring together the different pieces, which is something that no other organization is doing. So we bring together research and evidence, we look at the facts, we look at the statistics that are out there, and at the same time we bring together people working in the space doing the work on the ground. If you think of the likes of Arambi or the Yes Initiative or the SAYouth.mobi platform, all of these things that are really addressing linking young people to work opportunities. We try to bring those sectors and those people into the conversation, and we center all of that. At the center of all of that is young people's lived experiences. So we try to include young people and make sure that what they experience on the ground really feeds into the solutions that we then put forward to policymakers. So we really try to bring together, like a choreographer of a dance, bring together all these different pieces to tackle the crisis that is youth unemployment.
I really like that approach by Youth Capital, because I think oftentimes, especially when you find yourself maybe as a young person who's unemployed, it's very easy for you to just be like a number. So I really like the fact that you really try to bring in people's lived experiences into this and tackle it not just from a statistical perspective, but also from a very human-centered perspective. I really like that. So what led to the launch of Youth Capital?
So Youth
When
Capital
you
is
actually launched?
Yeah, so we launched kind of, you could say, officially in Feb 2018, when I was the first person to come on board, and then our website only launched in December of 2018. So we really only became public facing, I would say, at the end of 2018. Obviously, after a lot of background kind of work, which I think we'll speak about a bit later. So Youth Capital was really born out of the minds of the DG Murray Trust, and the DG Murray Trust is a public benefactor and a grant maker, but also through its work, funding NGOs, funding various initiatives. It also identifies gaps in its strategic objectives, one of which is that all young people get their first decent job. So that's a big strategic objective of the DG Murray Trust. And so through its work, it saw that the gap in the youth unemployment conversation was one, that young people's voices are missing from the conversation, which we've just touched on, but two, that there wasn't a common and shared agenda for tackling youth unemployment. So, every government intervention or big, corporate that comes up with some job employment or job creation intervention, they might have their own targets. We're going to create so many thousand, so many million, none of which are ever realized if we're honest with ourselves. But for the sector, there isn't a common and shared action plan. So this is where youth capital really came in, and that is really what we spent the first 2 years of our existence doing, is developing that action plan. So one, that we make young people's voices at the center of our work, and two, that we have an action plan that is an action plan for the sector. It's not youth capital's plan, it's not out of my head, but really based, as I said, on the evidence, on the data, and most importantly on talking to young people and continuing to talk to young people. So it's not like we spoke to young people in 2018 and 2019 and now we have an action plan and we're done talking to them, but we go back to them constantly and engage with young people on a daily basis, literally, to make sure that what we're saying is still true for them, and that the solutions that we make are really tailor-made for young South Africans in 2021.
Okay, that's really brilliant. And I'm quite interested to find out. So South Africa has quite a lot of problems that one can sort of think of head. So why did Youth Capital specifically target youth unemployment?
So I think, personally for myself, why I was drawn to this is I think that for a thriving society, we need quality access and equitable access to education, healthcare, and employment. There is a dignity that comes with employment. And there's also, the investment return of giving somebody some kind of income and what they can do with that. You break the generational cycles of poverty. And so I think that, if we do not solve this unemployment crisis, which, let's be honest, has been going on for more than a decade now, the numbers have just been climbing. We haven't ever seen it substantially go down in that time. It continues, the numbers continue to grow. We're going to continue to perpetuate the cycle of poverty and deprivation, and access to poor healthcare and poor education, which just perpetuates the cycle even more for the next generation. And so I think if we want to break out of that and we really want to unlock the potential of South Africa, we have to start with young people, and we have to give them dignity through work opportunities, and then having money in their pockets to be able to do the things they want to do for themselves, their family, and their community. And so I think that's really what drives us focusing on this, as opposed to the millions of other things that we could have focused on.
I like the fact that when you speak of work opportunities, you also speak of the dignity that comes with, because you could have also just decided to, I don't know, give out grants and all of that, which of course in some instances are helpful, but in the long run, it normally doesn't work out for the recipients or beneficiaries. So I really like that part of trying or instilling that dignity that comes with someone being independent, working for themselves, getting their own money, and just being able to, I suppose, map out their livelihood in whichever way they see fit. So that's really powerful. So who works at Youth Capital? Can you tell us a little bit more about your team, how big it is maybe? And
Sure. So I think whenever I speak about youth capital, people are shocked by two things. One, that we're so young, and two, that our team's so small. But I have a rocket pack team with lots of energy. There's 4 of us, including myself, so we're a small team.
wow.
And I don't envision we'd ever be very much bigger than that, because our strength is in working with other people doing the work. So we never anticipate that we're going to solve all of this by ourselves. We don't think anybody can. But yeah, it took me a while to build this team, and to grow from, a little old me by myself to a team of 4. And we've got an awesome communication strategist who really leads our strategy on how we interact with young people, how we get out into the public, how we engage publicly, how we get people to know about Youth Capital. And then we've got a network mobilizer who really connects with young people, and links, those young people, and like really one-on-one conversations, making them feel heard and valued and seen, and connects that into the bigger work, the strategic work, which I lead. And then I have the help of a policy and learning manager who works with me on all of the advocacy and policy stuff, and writing up of the, technical research reports, and making sure that we weave quotes from young people, the stories of young people into that work. So
Yeah.
that's the team. And I think between us we have a nice mix of skills, communicating public facing versus communicating internally, and finding
Mm.
the different pieces. If you want to talk to young people, we do really cool quick Instagram lives, but if you want to go and present to a portfolio committee at parliament, then you need to have quite a structured document with your
Yes.
facts in order, and then we'll write that technical piece. So
Mm.
I think the strengths on the team complement the work really well.
Yeah, it does sound like you're quite a strong team. And I mean, I came across the work of Youth Capital and I thought maybe there was like a huge team behind all of that work. So I'm very happy to hear that it's quite a strong team. But I think the thing I'm most excited about is the fact that it's quite a young team, because I think, especially in South Africa, it's quite common to see a lot of people that maybe don't understand the lived experience of young people, trying to solve the problems of young people without young people. And I think it's one of Youth Capital's quotes to say nothing about us without us. So I really like that from the team as well. There's that representation as well. So just to get a little bit into Youth Capital and the work itself. So from reading your documents, I came across the action plan. And I think you have also mentioned that you are building or putting together, as the choreographers in this particular scenario, the action plan of how to tackle unemployment. Can you please talk a little bit more about that? What does that entail?
Sure. So the action plan was really um, formulated. As I said, I spent all of 2018 and the beginning of 2019, one, looking at the research that existed from South Africa, but also internationally, just for a point of reference. Although I want to be upfront about the fact that I think South Africa sometimes tries to adopt European models a little bit too enthusiastically for a context that is very different. So I just want to put that little caveat in there. But
Yeah.
looked at the research and then also looked at data. So one of my like really core passionate things that I feel very strongly about, regardless of what we're speaking about, is that research and academia should not sit in the ivory towers of universities. I come from that background, and after working in a very research heavy space for quite a number of years at the start of my career when I graduated, I really felt strongly that this is great that we all of us sitting here and we're doing all this research and we're analyzing all these things, and then we write these fancy
Mm.
papers, and no average person on the street is ever going to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think if people, anybody out there understood the value of research in advocating for their cause, if research was presented in ways that people could actually engage with and not lots of jargon and complicated numbers and figures and
Yes.
tables and stats, people would really could
Mm.
use it for their own advocacy and to advocate for their own needs based on
Mhm.
evidence. If you go to a government official and you say, research shows that this thing that you're doing only benefited 20% of the people it was supposed to benefit.
Mhm.
It's clearly not working. We need to change it. They can't really argue with that fact. It's not a feeling or an emotion, it's a fact. And so
Yes.
I feel very strongly about that. So, I went and I looked at data sets. There's lots of data sets that are publicly available, but you obviously need some kind of training to analyze it. And so I did
Mm.
that from a different lens. So you can read the government reports. That's South Africa's, quarterly labor force survey. You can read the report that comes out, but behind that, there's a whole big data set
Yeah.
of data. And so I went and I analyzed that. And while I was doing all of that very academic stuff, we also went around the country and spoke to young people, and we managed to get to 5 provinces in person and over 200 young people, and really found ways of engaging with them that wasn't your usual Q&A, sitting in a circle and me as the researcher asks them a bunch of questions and they give me the answers they think I want. But we
Mm.
really like made it fun and interactive. We used you know
Mm.
personas of like 8 young people that we obviously made up, but like trying to represent the breadth and diversity of youth in South Africa, and
Mm.
using Facebook models and really scenario playing and really interacting with young people across the age group of 15 to 34. And through all
Wow.
of that came up with what young people thought the problems were and what the research said the problems were. And those two very much overlapped. But what
Mhm.
we got from the conversations from young people was, as you said, like that human centered experience. So we
Yes.
can say, young people struggle to get them a check, for example. But when you speak to young people, why do they struggle? The
Mm.
research doesn't always speak to that. And so I think, having those two things together was a great compliment. And then you pull those things together into what we now have as our 10-point action plan. And it covers, the journey of a young person from school to work. And I think this has been another problem in addressing youth unemployment, is that we're so focused on get young people a job, get young people a job. That's what everybody
Yeah.
speaks about. But a young person is a human being living in a world with many other things going on in their lives besides the fact that they
Mm,
really need a job. And so, if we don't understand that entire journey, and if we don't look at that young person as a human being first and understand what that means for them, we can't really support them and address the challenges that they face. And so, it was very important for us that the action plan doesn't just speak about employment, but looks at the journey from when they're at school to when they maybe go and try to do a post school qualification, to that time when they step out of a learning institution into a really a nothingness, no support,
mm,
very few people in their social networks to help, no money to look for work. And then how do they then step into finding work opportunities in a country like ours where, the economy is in a terrible state, and so jobs are few and
yeah.
far between. So, we really try to look at all of that in our action plan.
Okay, that's quite, it seems like it was very well thought through. I really like the fact that you even said that the method that you sort of took on in trying to get the information from the young people was not just a Q&A, because I mean we all know that even that can affect whatever results you achieve from that. So I really like the fact that there was a lot of thought that went into that process, and especially to make it a very human-centered experience. And it's quite amazing how many people you were able to reach with your very small team. So I'm quite impressed. But yeah, I think the work that Youth Capital does is quite important. And you've already touched on the process that you followed to make sure that the work you do is holistic. So I'm going to be filming videos following this one that will touch a little bit on the three sections that you speak about or that you are targeting. But can you touch a little bit on how you want to achieve your goals and the three different topics that you would like to achieve that through?
Sure. So the action plan covers three broad areas. So the 10 points are divided across education, transitions, and jobs. And because you're going to go into detail, I won't go into detail on each of the 10 points, but I'll just speak broadly about the areas. And so when we look at education, what we really thought was important is that we need to support young people to finish what they start, whether that's basic education, whether that's a short course, whether that's a degree. What is getting in the way of young people finishing what they start, right? We know that qualifications are important, it's valued by the labor market, but young people aren't finishing those qualifications. Why? And some of them are finishing, but they aren't getting their certificates. Why? And so, how do we address those problems? And then, secondly, if we look at the area of transitions, as I just said, young people literally step out of a schooling environment. Even if you're in an under resourced school that isn't so great, you are in an environment where there are adults, hopefully at least one adult who's rooting for you, right?
Yeah.
Or at least an adult that you can go to and say, I have a question, where can I find an answer? Now young people step out into nothing, right? They don't have the support of a schooling environment. Many of them, 60% of young people in the 2011 census survey, which is a long time ago now, and we due to have one kind of now, but COVID's gotten in the way. Um, 60% of young people, so 6 in 10, lived in a household where there was no employed adults. So, how do they access information about how to apply for work, where to apply for work, how to show up for an interview, and if you are successful, how to show up for work if you've got no adult to model that behavior for you
Yeah.
and no social capital to connect you? I personally have gotten every single job I knew because somebody said to me, here's a job ad, or please apply for this, we think you would be great. So it's not there is the nepotism aspect. We know that that's a problem in South Africa, where you get the job
Definitely,
because you
yeah.
know someone. But not just that, we just talk about just passing on of the opportunity, just sharing a job ad. Young people don't have that, so that is what we speak about in supporting young people in that transition space. And then the cost of job seeking, you touched on a basic income grant, which is very topical at the moment. And for young people, actually having a basic income grant could unlock the potential to look for work, because you can't look
Yes.
for work because it costs money to look for work, but you have no money because you don't have a job. And so
Yeah.
young people's families are literally using their grandmother's pension to support young people's job seeking, and having
Mm,
to choose between providing for the family or letting this person look for a job. These are the
sure.
choices that young people are having to make. And so we really, in that transition space, it's really about supporting young people in this very difficult space. And then, when we look at the job section, the economy is in the state that it's in, and it's going to take a lot to fix that. But what opportunities exist even in this poorly performing economy that we aren't tapping into? So we look at public works opportunities, and that gets a bad rap because people are treated badly. It's menial labor, doesn't really give young people experience or help them get sufficient references or experience to help them access the next opportunity. So there's lots of money going into these initiatives. Young people are working informally in the social economy. They're doing their hustle. How do we start valuing those things, and having a society that values those things? And how do those things
Mm,
start meaning, that young people are on a kind of career path and some kind of trajectory? So,
yes.
in a nutshell, that is the broad kind of spectrum of the action plan.
I really like that. And specifically the part where you spoke about how a lot of young people don't have access to either the social capital or even the financial means to access opportunities. Because I think there's a lot of people that come up when such problems are brought up who will say, but the opportunities are out there and everyone can, like, they're free for everyone to kind of apply for them. So why aren't people applying? But I always say that an opportunity that you don't know about is just as good as one that doesn't exist. So
Absolutely.
it's very important work to kind of connect
Yeah.
to these opportunities that are there for them, just so that they have that platform that they can access them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just reminded of an example. Like, sometimes we think that this crisis is so big and we need some massive complex interventions, and there are systemic things that do require massive government and policy interventions to shift.
Mm,
But a simple thing like my church has a kind of what they call common good, and it's an outreach arm that works in various sectors. One of which they run a work readiness program, and
oh,
they had a
wow.
simple little WhatsApp line. So our church community has some very wealthy people in it, and then some less wealthy people in it. And so all they said was, here's a WhatsApp number. If you're out at a shopping mall and you see an ad for a sales assistant or a waiter or whatever, take a screenshot, pop it in the WhatsApp chat.
Mm,
Because young people that are struggling to find work are not walking around in shopping malls in big urban cities because they don't have the transport money to get there, number one. And
mm,
so just sharing of like, hey, I saw, or like, I'm in a community Facebook group, and there's often people who saying, I'm looking for, an administrative assistant, somebody young, it's a half day a week position or whatever it is, I want to give somebody an opportunity because I have a small business and I just need a little bit of help.
yeah.
Young people aren't on those groups. So it's a simple thing of like taking a screenshot, sharing it to a WhatsApp number, and then, the
Mm,
organization that works with young people who are going through the work readiness program share that opportunity. So, these simple little interventions that actually come down to social capital, that I think we don't always think about. You think I'm an individual, for those of us who are employed or a little bit more resourced, like, what could I do? But I think there are little things that if each of us did those little things could actually, add up to big impact for young people.
yeah, that's actually very true. And I think I like the fact that it's also just breaking it down to the smallest thing that each person can do in their everyday lives as they go about their lives. So that's quite yeah, I think it also will encourage a lot of people in general, because I think everyone is appalled by the unemployment rate, whether they're affected or not. It's just not a good thing to exist in a country with such a high unemployment rate, especially young people. So I think speaking about this also opens up those conversations to say, what does each and every person do in their everyday life to kind of make the situation better, so that we're not just waiting for some person out there to kind of solve all our problems for us. So speaking of this work that you do, it's quite complex and there are a lot of parts that fit into it. So who are the some key partners that Youth Capital works with or engages often with?
So I think if we look at broad sectors, we obviously engage with firstly academics. So we work with
Mm,
universities. We have, I think, you've covered our second chance matrix on the fringe brief, and we sometimes commission research from universities, or sometimes we just have a collaboration with them. They know the work that we do. The big universities know the work that we do, and
mm,
sometimes they'll just drop me an email and say, we've done this piece of research and we're sure that you're going to be interested in the findings. So it's just touching base with academics all the time who are working in kind of youth unemployment or education, and just keeping up to date with what the latest research tells us. Because especially with COVID, things
mm,
change all the time. And so, what was true 2 years ago is definitely not the case now. And so we stay up to date. So academics broadly, if you think about University of Cape Town or University of Johannesburg has a whole unit that we work with. University of Stellenbosch also has a unit that's quite focused on this. So we work with academics, and then we work with people who are doing the work. People doing the programs on the ground. So Harambe, which is something that I think most young people, watching this will know about. But there's lots of small organizations. I mentioned the one that's through my church, the Zano Kaino network that's based in Cape Town. There's Omuzi, who does great work with equipping young people through learnership training. They're based up in Joburg. Um, so there's lots of smaller actors who are doing the work, implementing partners who work with the Yes Initiative,
mm,
who have experience with education assistants and how to train them and place them in schools that they add the most value. So we are always talking to people who are doing the work and working directly with young people, and either training them or equipping them for the workplace and then placing them in those jobs, because we don't do that. So we talk to them quite a lot, and then we also obviously involved in the policy space. So a very big
yes.
partner of ours currently is Youth Lab. They're an organization that's been around for about 8 years as a policy think tank, but also very much engaging with young people and how young people engage with policies that affect them.
Mm,
And so, we partner on them. We lean on their strengths. Been around for longer than us. They know the ropes better than we do. And so we're always acknowledging what already exists. We don't want to
yeah.
build new things or do new things. We just want to
Mm,
build on, the knowledge in the space. So those are the policies, the policy conversations that we have, and then obviously government. So all those conversations need to lead somewhere. And if we're talking about systemic change, then we really need to be working with government to get
mm,
policies, and I think we have great policies. It's the implementation that falls down. And why does the implementation fall down? Because it doesn't take into account the lived experiences of the people that the
yes,
policy is trying to
definitely.
address. So we've got quite we're building a strong relationship with the NYDA, and trying to direct their work to really have better impact. We know there's been issues there before. So and
Mm,
then we also are in contact with the portfolio committees for the relevant departments. So education, labor, the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities. We engage with them on policy. They are aware of our work, and that is something we're actively trying to strengthen this year. And then lastly, something that we're actually going to be starting a series on in the next couple of weeks, is looking at the business sector a little bit more intently. So we
mm.
need private businesses, we need, the private sector to join our cause. And so this has been something that we know we need to do, but we haven't necessarily always done so well as a startup. But we are building those relationships, and we think that that's really important. So that's another key area of growth for Youth Capital in the next year or so.
Oh, wow. I really like the fact that you're not trying to sort of reinvent the wheel, because I feel like some people with good intentions, organizations with good intentions, sometimes get stuck in that process of reinventing the wheel, trying to ace your policy within your team or, but I like the fact that you're bringing in experts and people who've been doing this for a long time to kind of build towards one goal, which I think is very, very powerful. And I mean, you've touched a little bit on the fact that you are now looking into partnering with businesses, but who else is Youth Capital looking to partner with?
So I think, we obviously are only as strong as the youth network. So I didn't actually mention youth in the in the last little bit, but they're at the center of everything. As I said, we talk to them every day. We have like many WhatsApp groups going at a time, which I'm not even part of all of them, around various topics or initiatives that we've run. So we've got the working policy group that we run with Youth Lab. We've been running a campaign with Daily Vox over the past couple of weeks, called hashtag Be the Driving Force. And so we've got a WhatsApp group going that's related to those conversations. We've had young people talk to other young people who are activists and experts in on topics from climate change through to menstrual poverty to basic income grant is the conversation happening this week. So we've got that WhatsApp group going, and we have various other WhatsApp groups that pop up all the time, depending on the conversations that we're having. So we're talking to young people, as much as we can all the time, and all of it's virtual at this point because of COVID. Previously we did try to have in-person engagements with young people, but we haven't done that for the past year. And so youth are really at the center of that, and young people, we always want young people to come on board. Follow us on our social media pages, Youth Capital SA. If you go to our website, youthcapital.co.za, there's a little WhatsApp tab, and you can click to become part of the broadcast list, and then you'll know you'll always be kept up to date with various campaigns. So we always obviously want to hear from young people. We want to hear about your stories. We want you to join the conversation. We want you to give your inputs into the policy comments that we submit. And so that's how young people can come on board. And then for organizations or businesses or even individuals, we're actually just in the process now of looking for people to endorse the action plan. So we've spent a lot of time and work, as you can see from the conversation so far, coming up with this action plan. But if we don't get everybody behind it, then it's just going to be a document that lives on our website. So no, we don't think there's any one organization, even government, that can address all 10 action points by themselves. And so we're really calling on anybody to look at the action plan and say, I support this action plan. Whether your work covers 1 point or 2 points or 3 points, or you're an individual who's like, one of the action points is grass circles, which is really about social capital. And I honestly think any working person can commit to that point, because what does that mean? That means find one unemployed young person and take them under your wing. And that doesn't mean that you have to have long conversations with them and spend hours helping them. It can literally mean that you have them on WhatsApp, and when you see a job ad, you just send it to them, and maybe they send you their CV. Like, it could be as simple as that. A WhatsApp back and forth with a young person can make a huge impact on that young person. So I think when you look at the action plan, we really would look for anybody to endorse it, and you can drop us a mail saying, I, Kristal Duncan Williams, representing organization X, or as an individual, would love to endorse this plan. And we'd really like to get some signatures of people up on the website and some logos of organizations that endorse the plan. So, if you fall into any of those categories, that's how you can get involved. And if you're a young person, the best way to get involved is to just follow us on social media. We're always running different campaigns or different conversations. And if it's an area of interest for you, then, you can jump in.
Okay, thank you for that. I will be adding your social media details in the description box. So for those that are interested in following the social pages or the WhatsApp groups, all of that, you can check out the description box where I'll put all the details there. So you've already touched on how one can get involved, but I know you recently had applications for the Youth Capital Influencers. Can you tell us what the program is about and who you're looking for the program? I imagine you run it on a yearly basis, if I'm not mistaken. So just so that people know to apply next year, what does that program look like, and who do you want to be part of it?
So we're very honest. I think you've picked up from the conversation so far that we don't have all the answers and we're a startup. So we launched the program last year. So we had applications at the end of 2019 for the 2020 big pilot, and then COVID happened. So, we got to run the program as envisioned for the first couple of weeks of the year, and then everything kind of was in turmoil, as everybody experienced. And so we kind of quickly try to redo the plan and make it an online platform. But we learned a lot in the process. And the whole point of the Youth Capital Influencer program is that we need a youth-led constituency that stands behind Youth Capital. If Youth Capital is just me and my 3 team members saying things on social media, it's completely pointless, right? So we need young people, and we need active engagement with young people, and we need young people who represent, as I said, the breadth of diversity that exists in this country.
Yes.
And we can't just have initially, a lot of the young people we spoke to are young people already in youth organizations, because they're easy to get to. You contact the organization arranges for 20 young people to show up, and that's easy and that's fine. But what about the young people who are very disconnected, who are sitting at home and aren't part of any of these organizations, or maybe feel like they have no value to add, or they aren't good enough, or that program requires you to have a matric and you don't have a matric, so you're not part of the program. And so really trying, how do we start accessing these young people in more inclusive ways. And so my team of 4 cannot get to every corner of this country. And so that's really where the idea of the influencer program came. How do we find young influential, so, influencers, young
Mm,
influential people who are interested in this work? So obviously they must care about at least one of the 10 action points, or more broadly, be focused on one of the 3 big focus areas. They've got
mm,
leadership ability. They're already doing work in their communities. They care about making their communities a better place. How do we give them a platform, to kind of put forward their ideas, to support their ideas, to amplify their ideas?
mm.
And that's really what the Youth Capital Influencer Program is about. The shape and form of it, this year is completely different to last year, if I'm honest with you. And so that's why we only did recruitment now. And it's only a 6-month program, is because we're trying something completely different this year. And, we've got a really amazing group of 37 young people, and we have representatives from all 9 provinces.
Wow.
And I think we've got a nice mix of male and female in the group. And we yeah, so we're actually just at 1 meeting so far, because we've just launched, and they've got another meeting coming up
Yes.
in a week and a bit. And the idea is they're really going to be our sounding boards. So we're going to say to them, we want to focus on this action point for the next 2 months in our social media, in our communications. We think we need to run a survey, and then we need to understand from that survey what the challenges are, and then we need to put forward recommendations. What do you think that that's what young people need? How will we get young people to fill in the survey? Obviously, the more people who fill it in, the better. How are you going to
Mm,
share the survey in your network? So it's really using young people that have some social capital or some influence, and putting information into those spaces so they can spread it for us, because we can't do it all. And so,
yeah.
we always are recruiting young people, as I said, who are already leaders in their community, who are passionate about one of the points or one of the focus areas,
Mm,
um, and who are kind of influencers in a way. So they don't have to have the biggest following on Instagram to be a youth capital influencer, but they must have
yes.
influence in their community, or with the young people in their community.
Mm,
And so I'm really excited. I think we have a really amazing group this year.
yeah.
We ourselves at Youth Capital are clear on what we want the group to do. And so, yeah, just watch the space, because
Mm,
probably we'll be recruiting again for next year, depending on how this year goes. So there will be an opportunity to get involved. And these 37 young people from across all 9 provinces are going to look for young people in their networks, in their communities, in the areas where
yes.
they live, to help them, run Youth Capital's campaign. So even though you might not be one of the 37, you could be part of their little, mini network. So
Mm.
I think the best way to stay in touch with all of that is to just, as I said, the social media pages.
Yeah. I actually look forward to hearing about how this goes. Like you're saying, it's very experimental because of the changes that had to happen because of COVID. So I'm looking forward to hearing about how you've sort of decided to roll everything out and how it works out as well for the young people. Yeah. Um, you've touched a little bit on your partnership with government, but I sort of wanted to expand a little bit on that because unemployment is obviously one of government's biggest problems. So it would obviously make sense for Youth Capital to work with government, and you have mentioned that you do. In what ways have you worked with government before, and what ways are you looking to work with them, I suppose, going forward with the different campaigns now?
Sure. So, we've tried to give input where it was possible on the national youth policy, also on the presidential youth employment intervention. We're trying to get closer to, the really core team that works on that program in the Office of the Presidency. But we obviously know some of the players like the NYDA and Arambi are very closely involved. And so, even if we haven't managed to get right to the front, into the inner circle, we are speaking to the other actors and trying to at least influence from that direction, and to say, this is the, and again, always going, this is what the research says, this is what young people say, and this is why you need to take these things into consideration when designing this intervention. So the presidential youth employment intervention actually is one of the better ideas government has had, because they're not like trying to start new things. They're just looking at things that already exist. But what we have to be honest about is that those things exist but haven't worked. So if we're going to build on those existing things, we need to make them work better. And so
Yes.
what do we need for that? And so we are talking about that. Then there's the National Planning Commission, who had quite a lot of engagements through from 2019 up until beginning of this year, looking at the NDP, so the National Development Plan, and saying what specifically around youth labor market transitions does the NDP call for, and how close are we to achieving those goals. And we were very involved in those meetings. I gave a presentation as a response to the final report put forward by the commissioner for that, in answer
Oh.
to what the report put forward as recommendations to government. So I kind of gave a response to that. So that was great. And then we are, engaging with the NYDA around the integrated youth development strategy, which is the implementation plan from the National Youth Policy. And that's a very implementation plan document, and saying to the NYDA at Youth Capital, these points that you say you want to achieve with these goals, we've got research or we've got insights. How can we work with you? So we've put that forward as a proposal. How can we work with you around these very specific things that are aligned with Youth Capital's agenda? And so these are some of the ways we're engaging with government. We do send reports to the the portfolio committee for basic education, when we have reports pertaining to education. And so we're hoping to get a spot to present there soon. So these are some of the ways we've engaged with government.
That's actually quite brilliant. I really like the fact that there's a lot of collaborative work towards this, because it's quite a big problem. And as you've said, no one organization or entity can actually solve the problem on its own. So I really like the collaborative effort. And I feel like you are really playing that choreographer in the middle of everything: the young people, the government, the policies, the statistics that come from the academics. I really like that play on collaborating, because I think that's the only way really that we will sort of build a stronger plan going forward and just tackle unemployment finally, strategically. Yeah, so I really like that. Are there any parting words that you have?
Just to say that,
Or organizations, really anyone who's going to come across this video?
sure. So I think just to say to young people that we know that you're frustrated because we have these talk shops and we say, come and talk to us, and it feels like nothing changes. But we really do need you to join these conversations, and we really are trying at Youth Capital to take it beyond the talk shop space, because we know young people are sick and tired of talk shops. And so, please, join us, follow our social media pages, because we want you to say to us, you guys have been talking about this for ages. Here's a simple solution. Like, let's just get, a transport stipend for young people would help drastically with the cost of job seeking, with young people going to look young people trying to get to interviews, for example. So, we need your voice, we need your energy, we need your experience and what you think the solutions are to make Youth Capital and its plan relevant, and constantly relevant. So, and then to anybody else who might have something to add to the action plan, or have a skill or a program, please do get in touch with us about endorsing the action plan. You can find our contact information on the website. Drop us an email, give us a call, send a WhatsApp, whatever is easiest for you. We really need as many people as possible to say, this is the action plan for youth unemployment for South Africa, and we get behind it, in our capacity, whatever that capacity is. There's no action too small, and there's definitely no action too big. But I think, just to say, do not feel overwhelmed by the crisis. It will take time, but I think the pandemic gives us a moment to, look at things very differently. It's forced us to work differently. It's forced us to engage with each other differently. And so there's really a moment now to do things differently, because the way we've been doing them has clearly not worked. And so, yeah, just to say that, we must address this problem, and we can address this problem, but we need to do it together, and we need to all be committed to it. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so very much for coming. I really believe in the work that Youth Capital does. I think that's exactly what we need as a society right now, is some sort of direction that involves all the key stakeholders and just moving forward as one. So thank you very much for the work that you do, for the commitment to this work, because I think it's quite it's a big task, and it can sometimes feel, I imagine, overwhelming. But it's quite great that there are people like you who are committed to tackling this problem and just to supporting young people in living out their lives, their passions, and hopefully getting to a point where they can fulfill their highest potential. So thank you very much for coming here, and all the best with the work that you do going forward.
Thank you, and to you too. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So there you have it. Now you know about Youth Capital, who's in it, and the work that they do. You can definitely get involved by connecting to them. I will be putting all their details below. So whichever platform is easiest for you, please reach out to them and either add to their plans that they have, as mentioned, or if you're a young person that wants to contribute to the conversations that are being had to shape the solutions that come up, please do not be scared to reach out to Youth Capital. Thank you so very much for watching this video. Please like it if you haven't already, and definitely share it with people you think will benefit from knowing this information. Thank you very much. Goodbye.